Please join me in Gassho by placing your hands together and repeat the Nambutsu with me. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namo Amidabutsu. Namandatsu, namandatsu, namandatsu. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this wonderful occasion of Eitaikyo. So for the Dharma School students, do you remember what Eitaikyo means? Eitaikyo. Okay, so A, the EI, the first kanji character, means forever, or everlasting, continuous. Tai can mean generation. Okay, so there's many different generations in this room right now. And Kyo means sutra. So we just chanted the first part of Amida, the Amida Sutra. What this occasion means is that throughout and across all of the generations, we are chanting the sutras. So for the Dharma School Dharma talk today, let's answer this question. Why do we have to chant the sutras? Some of you may not enjoy chanting sutras very much. Some of you may go, I don't like it because either it's boring, or you think it's boring, or it's in a foreign language you can't really understand, and for some of them it's like it's just this monotone thing that we do. However, chanting and reciting the sutras is incredibly important to our tradition for Jodo Shinshu. For our Dharma School students, I know for a fact that many of you have songs memorized. You have some of your favorite songs in your head and that you listen to in the car that you can sing without a guide, right, or without the lyrics in front of you. So actually, I'd like to open it up to some of the Dharma School students. Don't feel put on the spot. Naya, what's your favorite song? Okay, all right. Are you able to sing that from the top of your head? Right now? You don't have to sing it right now, but you can. So for example, if the song were to come on in the car, you'd be able to just sing along to it, right? Without pulling up your phone and watching the lyric or looking at the lyrics, right? Yeah, right. So same thing. Let's see. Enzo, what's your favorite song? You have a lot? Yeah. But you can probably recite them or sing them, right? Definitely? Yeah. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be great? And not that I want to force this on people, but if we treated the sutras the same way that we treated our favorite songs. So let's see. So for example, how many of you Dharma School students can recite Amida Kyo from the top of your head? Nyoze ga mo nichiji bunzai shae kokugi ju kiko doku onyo dai bikushu sen ni 150 nin ku kaize daiara. I guess I'm the exception to the rule. No, I'm just kidding. But the point is, right, is that, one of the main reasons why we recite these sutras so much is because Buddhism was and still is and will continue to be an oral tradition. And yes, we have texts and we have guides that can help us read these teachings, okay? But before that, right, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, never wrote any of his teachings down. So, not even like in Abrahamic religions where Moses went to the mountaintop and then came down with the stone tablets, right? Because the stone tablets have some written language on it, right? But Shakyamuni Buddha never wrote any of his teachings down. So, one of the interesting things about the Amida Sutra, or that about all sutras, is that most of them start with this phrase "nyoze gamon," which means "thus I have heard." Okay. Now, there's a character in all of this story I want you all to remember. His name is Ananda. Ananda. Say that with me, Ananda. One of my best friends actually from Japan, his name is Anan-san, and Hatanaka sensei, Anan is his first name. And that Anan is the same Anan from Ananda. Okay? Now, why is Ananda so important? Legend has it, Ananda memorized everything verbatim of what the Buddha said. So for Dharma school students, be honest with me and raise your hands. How many of you remember the lesson your teachers taught you on Wednesday? Okay, good. All right, good. So there are some, good. Okay, I'm glad. There are some things that are sticking with you, okay? However, most of the time, okay, so here's a question. What about this? How many of you remember what my Dharma talk was last week on Sunday? Probably not, right? Goes in one ear, goes out the other. No, but probably the important things stick with you. So like, maybe you get a general idea of what I said. However, Ananda was able to remember exactly what the Buddha said verbatim, every word. And you'll notice that's not an easy thing to do, because the Buddha, when the Buddha speaks, does not speak in general terms, does not speak in concise ways. The Buddha lists everything out. So you notice the part when we chanted the Amida Sutra, O shiki yoko, O shiki shoko, shaku shiki shako, byaku shiki byako. Like he's listing out all the colors of the light that these jewels are emitting. So red, blue, green. He doesn't say a lot of colors. He doesn't say a lot of colors were emitted. He says the red jewel emitted red colors. The white jewel emitted white colors. The blue jewel emitted blue colors. Sounds very specific and very succinct. But this is actually to help us with visualization of what the Pure Land is supposed to look like. So there is a methodology and a reason as to why we recite all of these things, right? So there's a couple of layers, Dharma school students, I want you to remember for Eitaikyo. Number one is that Buddhism is an oral tradition. It's a tradition that's passed from story to person, from mouth to ear, okay? And then it's our job, it's our duty as Buddhists to continue that recitation so that everybody else can hear these stories. So, especially for our Dharma school students, there's probably many stories that your parents have told you. Probably your grandparents too, if your grandparents are still around. And you probably have this idea, you probably have this feeling of, I've heard this story already. I've heard this story already. This is getting boring. I've heard this before. I've heard this all before. But then guess what? Someday, when you may have children, or if you actually mentor children or mentor anyone in the next generation, if you hear those stories enough, you'll memorize them. And you'll be able to tell them either to your children or to your students or to the people you train. Because these are important lessons, your parents and your grandparents continue to tell you, just as is the story of the Buddha's lessons to us, and it's important that we continue passing those down. This is the meaning of Eitaikyo. So A means forever, or ever continuous. Tai means generations, and Kyo means sutras. So with this in mind, Dharma school students, I want you to heavily consider the importance of these lessons that you learn here at the temple, but then also in your daily lives. What are the lessons that speak to you, that make you feel moved, that make you feel like you thoroughly understand how to move forward in life? And are you just going to hoard all of that wisdom to yourselves? Now, I'm not encouraging you all to become know-it-alls and to, give unsolicited advice, right? However, when the occasion does call for it, sharing these teachings is a gift. And these are the gifts that we are obligated, or that it is incumbent upon us to continue passing down. So I would like you all to think about the lessons your parents have taught you, the stories, in fact, actually, the stories that your parents have told you. And ask yourselves, which of these really speak to me? Do these really resonate with me? And if so, maybe share them. Oftentimes in school, we are given the wonderful opportunity to share some of our family history and stories with our class or with class projects. And these are opportunities that you should take very seriously, not out of moral obligation, but with a clear understanding that this is a large part of where you come from. Without these stories, without these people from your past, you would not be here. And you would not be here to share it as well. As we continue walking down this path and this bumpy road that we call life, the Buddhist teachings, your parents' teachings, the teachings of your teachers are there to assist you in that path. And trust me when I say it is bumpy. You will experience a lot of obstacles along your way. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way, but other times you might actually remember a lesson that your parents have taught you, or that the Buddha was able to teach you. How to manage your emotions, right? Not suppress them, how to manage them. How to deal with people we don't like, right? Don't shut them out, don't kick them to the curb. How to manage your encounter with them. All of these things. And especially as you continue to grow into adulthood, ask yourselves, what lessons have I learned? Am I doing a good job? All of these things. I remember when my dad said this. Sensei said, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, but hopefully, hey, Sensei said this thing the other day, and that actually really made me think about this. But with that being said, the reason why we continue to chant these sutras like Jusei-ge, Sambutsu-ge, Eitaikyo, is because these are teachings that have beautiful lessons in them. Lessons of non-discrimination, lessons of equal acceptance of all sentient beings. Does that mean something to you? Ask yourselves that. Think about that. What does that mean? And Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion, not just for me, but for all of us. Are we able to live up to that? So with this in mind, I'd like us all, especially Dharma school students, to think about our previous generations. Some of your ancestors may have belonged to different religions, which is totally fine. But then ask yourself, you are here now in the Tacoma Buddhist temple. What circumstances brought you here today? And are you grateful for those circumstances? This is another meaning of what Eitaikyo is. So thank you, Dharma school students, so much for attending today's Eitaikyo service, the chanting of the sutras. And I can only hope that as we continue, some of you might actually have Jusei-ge memorized by the time you graduate high school. Please join me in Gassho. And repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Nam Mandats. Nam Mandats. Nam. Concerning the supreme nirvana, the passage teaching the fulfillment of this vow in the largest sutra states, the sentient beings born in that land all dwell among the truly settled. For in that Buddha land, there is not one who is falsely settled or not settled. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Sensei.
It is so wonderful to see all of you here today for our annual Eitaikyo service. So, Eitaikyo, once again, means the continuous and forever chanting of the sutras throughout the generations. And it is wonderful because it really, once again, gives us a time to reflect on all of the past members who once were members of this temple. And if you're interested a little bit more about that, you can actually see a list behind you on the walls behind you where all the names of the families who used to be members of the temple are listed. Okay, and their contributions, of course, to this temple, both in terms of time, their financial, of course, and just their what's called their dana, their giving, their selfless giving to this temple. It's also, I think, our temple has some wonderful treasures in the hallway here next to the hondo that has many of the historical pictures of the Buddhist congregation throughout the decades, right? Okay, since the time of its founding to this present day today. I actually, recently did a couple of memorial services, and it just really got me thinking once again as to, without all these people from the past, we would not be here. And realizing once again for all of us that this temple building is not just a building, right? And because it's so easy for us to step through these temple doors and to take for granted the space that we sit on a weekly basis. It's just here. It's just, here. It's where I go. At the same time, when we really think about it, we're probably the last operating building of the historical Japantown of Tacoma. No more, and yes, there's the Methodist church down the street, but it's only really, now it's really used as a classroom building for the University of Washington, which isn't a bad thing. But once again, we are the only temple now, the only religious entity of the historic Japantown of Tacoma that still is functioning the way that it was originally intended to. In recent years of our situation, it's been, I have observed a lot of very, very unsettling things in the news and in current events. And I can't help myself but wonder, how my ancestors during, their turbulent times must have felt. There's a book recommendation I have for all of you called American Sutra. It's not really a scholarly book, but it does have a lot of information in it, and it's written by Reverend Duncan Buchan Williams of the Soto Shu in the United States of America. And in there, he details many accounts of Buddhist members, ministers and lay members, and their experiences during the time of incarceration during World War II, when many Japanese were forcibly removed from their homes and forced to live in prison camps because they were considered the enemy of the state, simply because of their ancestry. And the sad thing about this is that the first people who were taken were Japanese community leaders and priests like me. I grew up quite comfortable in terms of my, background. I grew up in a beautiful Sacramento suburbia where, my biggest worry was homework. And in that regard, right, I can say I lived an incredibly privileged life. I'd never really had to worry about when food will be on the table next time. I never had to worry about, whether or not, mom and dad had a job or whether they would be able to fund my education. They were able to do these things for me. And so with that, I grew up with this feeling of nothing really bad can happen to me, right? Nothing really, outrageous or anything unheard of would ever occur to me. Sadly, for my grandparents, that wasn't the case. Even for my parents, right? They also went through things as well. But my great-grandparents and my grandparents who were forcibly removed from their homes, I can't imagine what they were feeling. And I can't even think about, would this even happen to me? I still, in a great sense, take for granted that these types of tragedies would never occur to me. We live in a civilized country. We live in we live in the modern age where this kind of thing isn't a problem. And yet, people are still people. The human condition is still the human condition. And I find many videos and news reports of very disturbing occurrences in our own country and across the world. To me, this is why Eitaikyo is actually so important. It's not just a meaningless holiday where we do these different rituals, where I chant Sanbujo in the center here, but it's the message that these sutras give us. Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion reaches all sentient beings and is meant specifically for all of us who are suffering the human condition. Right? This isn't to say that we need to turn off our emotions and become like detached robots and not care about the plight and the sorrows of society. But if anything, it reminds us why these types of messages are so important in today's world. Even with the horrible treatment that our Nisei and Issei relatives had faced in time of adversity, many of them also chose to fight for the country who imprisoned them. I did a memorial service for Dr. William Sugiyama, who valiantly served and served his country by joining in the military. And it almost seems like a conundrum. Why would any of the Nisei or Issei choose to fight for a country that imprisoned them and so wrongly accused them of being traitors just because that they were of Japanese ancestry? It is because they still had a great sense of love and duty to their country and wanted to fight for this country to defeat the Axis powers at the time. I should also mention that war is a horrible thing and that we should never, ever resort to violence. Militaries might be necessary, yes, to defend our country, but it should never be the first option. But it also made me think about my background as well. I am Japanese American. I hail from Japanese ancestors. And a couple of those Japanese ancestors stayed behind in Japan during World War II. One of the most meaningful experiences for me was visiting my family in Kumamoto, meeting cousins that I had never met before who are directly related to me, but because they chose to stay in Japan during World War II, they also lived Japan's life, which means a couple of them fought for Japan during World War II as well, where they were once considered our enemies. I saw a special program about this where brothers who fought for the United States during World War II actually had to help manage some of the prisoner POW camps in Japan where the Japanese were caught, or Japanese soldiers were kept. And they saw their third brother behind the barbed wire because he fought for Japan during World War II. I can only imagine the horrible emotions that went through them at that time. Myself, my great uncle served as a Tokai pilot during World War II and died in the Battle of Okinawa, sacrificing himself for his country. And I was able to perform a hakamairi in front of his grave. Realizing that I come from a family split between two allegiances really outlines for me the horrors of war, but also the importance of the Buddhist teachings. Now that many of these people are past, I can still honor their memories without having to choose sides, realizing that the Buddha Dharma is for all of us. This is why I continue to chant the sutras. The message of peace and the message of togetherness, the message of interdependence is so relevant in today's world. We come to the temple to seek comfort and to seek things making sense because many a times our world outside may not make that much sense in terms of compassion, in terms of logic, and in terms of anger. We may go outside the temple seeing the 3 poisons on a daily basis. This isn't to say that we should stop watching the news and dig our heads in the sand and be uninformed. But hopefully coming to the temple can add some clarity to why humans behave the way that they do. Shakyamuni Buddha taught us long time ago that the reason for human suffering is the 3 poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. And all of us, whether we be Buddhist or not, are afflicted with these 3 poisons. Buddhism helps to teach us how to manage these 3 poisons For unless we become a fully enlightened Buddha, we will still always be afflicted with them. This isn't to be pessimistic or to beat us down and say we're horrible people, but to acknowledge our humanity. My past ancestors were just as human and imperfect as we are now. And yet at the same time, I still honor their memory by chanting the sutras, by sharing the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha and the teaching of Amida Buddha's great wisdom and compassion. When we think about our past members, they should be more than just names on a wall. They should be more than just a name in a ledger. Each one of those people has contributed significantly to the creation and to the maintenance and to the sustaining of this temple. I don't say this to guilt all of us and to say that we should, beat ourselves up. I say this to remind us to recognize that this temple did not get built out of a vacuum. And right now, currently, the temple is undergoing construction and renovations due to the efforts and the hard work of current members of this temple as well. But where does that example come from? When you join a temple community, it's not just to pay money or to get spiritual benefit. It's to be part of a living, breathing temple community, which means helping at events, but also being friendly and being there for one another. Giving to something more than just yourself. And by the way, not giving to me, but giving to a greater sense of a community that we listen to when we listen to the Buddhist teachings. It's true that this temple community does need sustainment. We live in a country where money is essential. But at the end of the day, what's most important are the people who make up this temple and the people who came before us. I certainly hope that when we take a look at the names on the walls, that we don't forget these people, even if we've never met them before. Realize that something doesn't come from nothing. All of you here have a story, have context, have a reason why you came here. Maybe you were interested in the Buddhist teachings. Maybe you wanted to be part of a spiritual community. Maybe your great-grandparents have been came to this temple during the early 1900s. Maybe your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents helped to build it. But regardless of the reason, the teachings are the center of why we are here as well. And part of that is living those teachings. This isn't to say that I think all of us can just immediately turn on our Buddha caps and become these wonderful, happy-go-lucky and togetherness people, but that we can actually have a real general sense of understanding our humanity and ourselves. And it's thanks to the past efforts of our members from long past that we do this, that we can understand this, or that we can partake in this. And this is another reason why we continuously chant the sutras. For if it were not for Shakyamuni Buddha, we would not be here now. Without the teachings to rely upon and to recite and to remember, there would be no point in coming to this temple. But also, without the friendship, the community, and the openness of the people of this temple, there would be no point in coming to this temple. One cannot exist without the other. So with this in mind, I would like all of us to heavily thank the past members of this temple, which is part of what you did during the chanting of Eitaikyo, coming up and offering incense. Lastly, the second part of our service, we say Eitaikyo mu-en. Mu-en means that we are recognizing a person who does not have living descendants. Maybe the last of their generation or the last of their line died with them. And at the same time, they are not less important. They are just as important for the foundation and the sustaining of this temple. And it is important that we honor them as well. These people are more than just names on a board or in a ledger. They were once living, breathing people who helped to create the temple and make it what it is today. Buddhism teaches us to acknowledge that, Yes, it's important to be in the present and to, not dwell too much on the past or worry too much about the future. But it's also important for us to thoroughly offer our gratitude to these people. Lastly, I would like to quote a line from one of my favorite shows, Kung Fu, starring David Carradine. And yes, I'm aware of the controversy behind this show. But Master Po once told Kwai Chang Caine, if a man dwells on the past, he robs the present. But if a man forgets the past, he robs the future. This is why Eitaikyo is so important. In closing, you will all please join me in Gassho as I once again recite the words of our founder, Master Shinran Shonin. Concerning the supreme nirvana, the passage teaching the fulfillment of this vow in the larger sutra states, the sentient beings born in that land all dwell among the truly settled. For in that Buddha land, there is not one who is falsely settled or not settled. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Nam Mandas. Nam Mandas. Nam Mandas.